All right, folks, we're going to get started here today. Welcome back. Welcome back to Leading the Holy Cross Way, this executive series. Again, to our current students, those enrolled students who are here earning a credit. Thank you for being here. I'll make sure that I grade last week's papers this weekend, so I can grade next week's papers this weekend as well, okay? But I do appreciate your attention and participation. It's been so rewarding for me to see you all participate in a class that you are really here for your personal growth, to learn, to grow. It's not high stakes, not high pressure. And in so many ways, you're being given what I'm going to call really like an executive master's in business administration and leadership through these various speakers. So much in high demand, by the way, that I've been asked to do this next semester as well. So we're thinking about some additional speakers that we'll bring in next semester. But before we even get into that, I'm super delighted to introduce to you somebody who, has become just such a wonderful friend. And I'm going to say mentor, and I'll maybe share some concluding remarks about that mentorship. But part of his talk today is going to be about mentoring, right? Finding a mentor, being a mentor. I think somebody had asked a question in the opening session about finding and being mentors, and that's going to be a big part of Dr. Phelps's talk today. So Dr. Craig Phelps, his initials after his name are D.O. That's an osteopathic doctor, right? So, or a doctor of osteopathy. Currently serves as the chancellor of A.T. Still University, Andrew Taylor Still University of Health Sciences. A.T. Still is a comprehensive graduate institution with 7 schools and colleges offering over 50 degree programs and certificates. ATSU has campuses in Missouri, Arizona, and California, along with 5 patient care centers in Missouri and Arizona. Before becoming chancellor, Dr. Phelps held various leadership roles at ATSU, including president, vice president of strategic initiatives, and provost. He's a native of Phoenix, Arizona. Dr. Phelps earned his undergraduate degree from Azusa Pacific University and his doctor of osteopathic medicine from ATSU Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine. Dr. Phelps has also practiced sports medicine and family medicine for over 25 years. He served as a physician for numerous teams and organizations, including, get this, the Phoenix Suns, the Phoenix Mercury, the Arizona Coyotes, Grand Canyon University, and Ballet, Arizona. Guided by the principles of servant leadership and the osteopathic philosophy of healthcare, Dr. Phelps prioritizes the needs of students and patients, fostering a collaborative environment where compassionate professionals work together to provide exceptional care and services. Most importantly, Dr. Phelps is supported by his better half, Stacy, and their son, Zach, who understand his calling and tolerate his demanding schedule. So he and his family are in from Arizona for the weekend, and he is forever grateful for their love and assistance and support. I've known Dr. Phelps now for close to a decade, and was really honored to be invited to serve as a member of the Board of Trustees at A.T. Still University 3 years ago, where I've learned a lot about the osteopathic philosophy. But I think what I've learned even more about through his modeling and his mentorship is about servant leadership and how to build winning teams. This small osteopathic college that he inherited has now gone across the country, serving thousands of students, and most importantly, sending those students into communities of need to practice medicine. It's really extraordinary. So I'm really excited to introduce to you today Dr. Craig Phelps.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Dr.
I
Phelps.
appreciate it. Zach had a tour earlier of the campus, my son, and he's a junior in high school. I'm going to come down to this level if that's okay. I wasn't quite sure how we were going to fill things up, but this is perfect. And so I appreciate the fact that he was able to take the tour. I do need your slide. Yep. Take the tour and get a chance to go across this campus. I was here last spring and once again was really impressed with the mission and the students. Right? It's really all about the students. So thank you for coming today. Very good. So how many of you are in the class and kind of have to be here because you're in the class? Okay, I get it. I understand Friday afternoon, it's tough. So we're going to try to have some fun and get you involved as much as you would like to get. How many are here because you're not in the class, you just kind of wanted to come and hear something, or President Clark said you need to be there, right? So appreciate that. So I think Brad gave the tour. Everybody probably knows Brad, right? Big guy. He's been around forever, 4 years, and loves it. And he just gives a fantastic tour. And then Samantha and Sarah from the admissions department, want to thank them too. And then your staff is just amazing. Jody and the folks there, very good. All right, well, let's kind of get started. You heard a little bit about who I am. Once again, our goals: have fun. I think you guys have a little test or quiz. Develop your concept of servant leadership. Wow, how can I incorporate that into my life, and how can that help me become a better mom, dad, citizen, leader, faculty member, right? Summarize a level 5 leader. We're going to learn about that. And then describe the value of a mentor, okay? And so, as was mentioned earlier, is how do you find a mentor? How do I go find somebody to help me along and answer some of the questions and open up some of the doors that I would like to have open for me? And how do I go about that? So we want to figure that out. So this is kind of who I am. I'm trying to be a better servant leader every day. And with our teams at ATSU, I'm always thinking about them. What can we do for them? How can we strengthen them, help them grow, help them succeed? Because we know if that happens, the organization is going to be better, right? I'm Stacy's spouse, Zach's dad, the ATSU chancellor. My background was sports medicine, family medicine for 27 years. I practiced. And then I was with the NBA Phoenix Suns that entire time. So I started when Michael Jordan, some of you may not know who he is, was a rookie, and then retired when I became president a little over 12 years ago. And then 16 years with the WNBA from the beginning of the WNBA till the time that I became president of the university. So a lot of fun, a lot of opportunities to do some things that people often don't get to do: travel with teams, learn about teams. We had a couple WNBA championships, so maybe we can talk about how they were able to, during those years, to become champions. We went to the NBA Finals a few times with the Suns, never won, darn it. Went through some controversial things with organizations at different levels, the Clippers and some of the other teams. And so maybe we can talk a little bit, or you might have a question about leadership in some of those areas. Osteopathic medicine, so what is it? So osteopathic medicine is just a way that we look at healthcare similar to how the MDs look at it, but once again with the idea of encompassing kind of the whole person. And this was started when Dr. Taylor, still, who was an MD, was trying to put together a new school. And he was looking at how the nervous system interacts with the rest of the body. And at that time, as you know, in the late 1800s, there wasn't a lot of knowledge. There was good knowledge, but not a lot of deep knowledge about anatomy and medicine and things that we have now, right? We have a lot of ways that we can figure out how the body works. But back then, they were trying to figure it out. So his thought was the body's a unit, but it's made up of 3 different individual units that come together, right? So we hear the body, mind, and spirit, right? So the body's pretty easy. We can kind of look at that. We understand that. The mind, we can picture how the mind works. There's neurology, there's a brain, there's a spinal cord. We have conscious, subconscious, unconscious, right? We can kind of figure that out. And the spirit, right? Probably the area that is the most difficult to look at and define, but pretty much everybody in this room understands, what the spirit is. So I'll give you a couple examples in sports of kind of how we think about the spirit. So at Scottsdale Community College, we were playing in a tournament. We had 2 of the young ladies on the team tear their ACL during the same tournament, right? Within a day or so. Same injury on MRI. Everything looked the same. There wasn't any complex areas. There wasn't any weird things going on. And we operated on both of them the same day. And so one of them, 1 or 2 days, this is back when people went in the hospital for this, out, ready to go. The other one, 3, 4, 5 days in the hospital, then she came out. One returned to play and had a continued career. The other one said, hey, this was enough, and I'm moving on to something different, right? So that intangible way that individual kind of looked at coming back from an injury was drawing on some different things, right? So one had a spirit that said, hey, listen, I want to get right back in there. I'm ready to play. Put me in, coach. Let's rehab this ACL and let's go back and play. The other one said, my spirit's different. It's changed a little bit. My motivation's changed a little bit. And she chose not to continue to come back and play, but to pursue some different things. So kind of those inner characteristics, those kind of intangible things that we think about. And it's important as business leaders, as family leaders, as organizational leaders, that we do understand the spirit is really important. So now today, there are some people that come to us in healthcare who wouldn't follow anything that we said until they talk to their spiritual leader, right? So it could be someone in the American Indian community. It can be somebody in one of the other cultures or religions around the world where spirit to them is really something critical and different. And if we blow that off, right, as servant leaders, and we discount that and say, oh, that doesn't work. That's a bunch of, we're probably not going to be very successful as an organization or even as an individual if we're not tuned into that fact that the spirit in some cultures and in some areas is really, really important. The body can take care of itself. Once again, we've all experienced this, especially the younger you are, right? Little kids can grow back fingers. They can do all sorts of amazing things that someone in their 80s can't do. And so it's a high-functioning, self-regulation, self-healing, and can take care of itself given the right environment, right? If we take care of our bodies, it's like if you have a nice car. If you take nice care of your car, it's going to last a long time. It's going to do well. If something starts to go wrong, you get it fixed right away. Our bodies are the same way, right? If we take care of it, if we make sure that something happens, we address it right away, we're going to have a nice, healthy body and a nice, healthy environment. Structure and function are interrelated, and we know that. So if somebody has a gait issue, so we might get an NBA player that would come in. I can think of a couple that hadn't been fully rehabbed from a lower extremity, say a foot and ankle injury, and maybe they could only bend their ankle to 90 degrees. Well, we know if you're in the NBA, you should be able to flex that ankle to like 110, 120 degrees. And so while one may be rehabbed and function, the other side isn't. Well, they can't run as fast, they can't jump as fast, they can't move as fast because that lever isn't working correctly. So we would go through and measure all the joints, and then we would start working on the joints. So, Shaq had a lack of rotation in his hip. And so I'd come to the training room, and our trainer would be there with 120-pound legs, stretching it, right, on the stretching table. And we were able to get him another 3 or 4 years of playing in the NBA. So when he was traded to another team, I asked our trainer, I go, will they still help, our players? Will they still work with Shaq every day and do all the things that he needs to do to stay healthy? And they go, heck no. It takes a lot of work to do that, right? It takes a lot of work to do that. But it's that structure and function, right? If it's not fully working, the individual is not going to be able to maximize their body. And so that's that relationship. If people are doing bad things to their body, right, smoking and doing other things, right, it's going to ruin the structure, right? The lungs are going to lose cells every day. They're going to end up with COPD, maybe some other things. And it's simply a relationship to structure and function. And organizations are like that too. So if there's something going on at Holy Cross College and Dr. Clark doesn't take care of it, President Clark doesn't take care of it right away, what's going to happen? It's going to fester, things are going to get worse, and maybe damage the organization or harm the students or harm the faculty and staff. So understanding and taking care of things right away becomes really important because structure and function need to be addressed equally. And then once again, great treatment is based upon understanding the principles of the body, mind, and spirit, the self-regulation, and structure and function. So if you take all that and then add it to all the great things we have in traditional medicine, the best genetics, the best MRI, the best medications, right? The best surgeons, the best of everything, you really create an environment that's about the patient, right? It's about the patient, it's about their family, and it's about their community. And so that's what we try to have our students think about when they come to ATSU. And it's often the thing that gets them hired on the other end, right? So when they finish medical school, they finish their residency, maybe a fellowship, and then they're looking to go out into the world to get a job. It's these types of characteristics, the things that you're learning here, that folks are looking for. Wall Street Journal last week, Brad says he appreciates the electronic version of the Wall Street Journal. He's a business major. Had an article from one of the leading folks at the Royal College of Surgeons, which is a traditionally long-term, older group that helps set the ideas of medicine in the current level. And his comments in the Wall Street Journal were, you know what, our students are going to learn the facts pretty easily. We don't really need to necessarily have them memorize as much stuff as we do, because where they really are going to learn the skills of medicine are out there working with the patients, helping them make decisions, helping understand the data that they're going to give them, understanding their diagnosis, understanding their treatment, understanding what things can be done. Once again, those human skills are coming back to be very, very important, especially in the age of AI and data collection, things that are like dictation that's going to be done just while you're in the doctor's office, right? It's called ambient dictation. What's your first name?
Tyler.
Tyler, okay. So Tyler might come in. Tyler, how are you doing today?
Good.
Hanging in there? Good. I noticed that you're here because the trainer sent you over because of your elbow. Do you want to share that with me? What happened? Okay, then he's going to say it, and the AI is going to pick it all up, right? And then we're going to say, okay, Tyler, do you mind if I examine your elbow?
Yeah.
No, okay, you do mind, but you don't mind if I examine it. Good. All right, good. And then the dictation hopefully figures that out. So then we're going to examine his good elbow first. Okay, good, normal exam. And the AI is going to know what a normal exam is. And then let's look at your other elbow. Okay, good, you're tender over here. I think we need to get an x-ray. Long story short, the ambient dictation is going to be able to take all that, order all the tests, help Tyler understand what his injury is by giving him some patient education that we'll be distributing at the end. If he needs to see a specialist, the AI is going to get Tyler an appointment with a specialist. If he needs to have any other tests, the AI is going to help us schedule all that, all before Tyler leaves the room and the dictation is going to be done. Then it's going to go to find out, okay, how does this connect to his insurance plan? And that will occur simultaneously, all through ambient dictation. We won't have to sit down and type anything, and we won't have to do anything along those lines. Now, with that comes a lot of trust between Tyler and the provider, right? It comes with a lot of regulation from state to state. Some states you have to record things this way, right? You have to inform the patient. Now, we'd always want to inform Tyler that ambient is picking him up. But in some states, how you record things is legal versus illegal. So they're going to have to work through some of that. But once again, a lot of technology coming. So that allows me then to spend more time with Tyler and get to know him and talk about his family, talk about how he injured his elbow, talk about the importance of following up, talking about the treatment plan, and not have to sit there typing and worrying about, he's got to go here for an x-ray, he's got to go here to see the elbow specialist, XYZ. So that's just kind of a hint of what technology is going in all of our lives, allowing us to be more engaged, right, with the customer, more engaged with our coworkers, more engaged with the people who supervise us or the people that you supervise. So having that understanding becomes very, very important. All right, so what's your name?
Michael.
Michael's taking notes for me. So I'd like to just take a quick couple seconds, and if you feel free, let me know what you think a good leader or a good teammate. What characteristics or what are some things that a good leader or a good teammate may have that helps that team or helps that organization be successful? All right? And there's no right or wrong answers. And if anybody'd like to just shout it out, that's great. Michael's taking our notes for us. Oh, back in the back? Yes.
Being able to lead by example.
Good. Being a good example, right? I think that's really, really important. And we can hopefully in our lives think of people who we looked up to who were good examples, right? Maybe it's a skill. Maybe it's a way that they conducted themselves. Maybe the way they communicated. So very good. Good. Another one, I think. Yep.
Communication.
Communication, a good communicator. I think that's really, really important, right? It's really hard today to communicate because we're so used to kind of walking around with our heads down or sending text or notes. I had my vice presidents, not my vice presidents anymore, they used to be vice presidents, now they're folks with the vice chancellors and other positions, have a discussion exactly like that. And I said, you know what, that doesn't sound like, why don't you guys talk to each other? Oh, we're sending emails. I go, stop, don't send an email, just pick the phone up and call them. And then sure enough, 10 minutes later, oh yeah, we took care of that. They could have spent 2 more days sending emails back and forth, but just picking up the phone and saying, hey, not sure why this is happening, allowed that person to really understand the viewpoint of the other person and have a one-on-one communication. So excellent, good. Yes?
Discipline.
Tyler, what was that?
Discipline.
Discipline, right? Discipline. I think a famous book you may know is that kind of, if you do something 10,000 times, then you kind of become somewhat of an expert at it. You develop the brain-body connection. And I'm going to make sure we get to everybody. Yes?
Being a good follower.
Yeah, sure. That's a really tough one, being a good follower, right? Because there's always someone further up, right? No matter where you are, there's always a board of trustees looking after you, right? And the board of trustees is being looked after in this situation, I'm sure, by the Catholic Church organization, and the Catholic Church organization is being overlooked by Rome, and then Rome is being, who knows, right? So there's always someone. So you have to be able to humble yourself and be a follower too. And sometimes when you're a servant, we'll talk about this, that person is really the follower, right? In other words, he is relying on the rest of the team, the rest of the folks to step up into the leadership position and is willing to follow. A good example, too, is a player that's distributing the ball early on to make sure that everybody gets involved in the game. So Michael Jordan was kind of known for that, right? So he wanted to make sure everybody got involved, everybody got a basket, everybody got engaged. Tim Duncan was like this, too. So when it came down to crunch time, everybody was pulling together. Nobody felt that, someone was being the show off or the star, right? So very good. Yes, sir.
The accountability.
Accountability, yeah, that's a big one. That's excellent. Yes, young man.
Trust.
Trust, accountability. Well, you guys are hitting them all. Good, yes.
To identify and solve problems.
Yes, someone who's a problem solver, someone who can identify and solve a problem, right? So with our folks, what we like to say is, please bring us all the problems, but if you can, also bring us a solution, right? That'd be very helpful. Yes.
I think like a unifying vision.
Good, very good. Bringing together a unifying vision, right? Trying to get everybody together, whether it's a goal to raise some funds, which I know you're very involved in the community. If it's to get people together to go help somebody out, I know you do those type of things. Food bank drives, right? All of these things, it's important to kind of have a goal to an organization around it, right? And you'll find that people are going to come to you with great ideas, and then hopefully you'll counsel them and give them back the authority to do it. And then what I always tell our folks is our job isn't really to tell people what to do, it's to help them do it, right? So that's with the cabinet. I say, you know what, we shouldn't just be telling people what to do. We need to help them do it, right? And sometimes people need a lot of help, but sometimes they just need that blessing to say, go do it, and let me know how it goes. Come, call me back in a week or two, right? Yes.
Being punctual.
Punctual, yes. So there's a saying that punctuality is the courtesy of kings and queens. Punctuality is the courtesy of kings and queens, and that comes from the old days when the king or queen would be holding court, and everybody from the villages and community would come in, right, throughout the kingdom, and come together. And they didn't have email and they didn't have cell phones. So they would look out and the folks would come up and say, I need some more water for the cattle. I need a place to put the hay. The neighbor's bugging me and I need this help. And the kings and queens realized that if they were late, they had 1,000 people that were standing around for 10 minutes. Well, 1,000 people times 10 minutes is a lot of time. And that's time when their folks weren't out there doing the things that needed to be done. So the kingdom had food, so the kingdom had protection, so the kingdom had people working in the silversmith shop to do all the things that they want to do. So punctuality is the courtesy of kings. I tell our students, be the first one there and the last one to go home. And then when you leave the rotation, they go, where's that Tyler guy? And they go, oh, he was just a medical student. Man, we need to get him back here in the residency. We need to hire that person, right? So very, very important. Good. Yes.
Someone who's willing to handle confrontation.
Confrontation, yeah. That's even a hard one for me, right? Being able to handle confrontation. So in my background in medicine, it's helped a little bit, right? Because you don't want things to fester. So I'm the feeling that when something is tough and something that isn't going well, that we be transparent and that we try to cure it as soon as possible. So think of something like a boil or a sore, right? You want to get that fixed as soon as possible, because if it continues to grow, it's going to have negative consequences to the body. And so we want to get things going right away. But being, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Anybody have a good idea when there's a lot of confrontation in a situation? Any good idea? All right, maybe we'll come up with some. So remind me. Yeah, good, very good. All right, any other quick thoughts? Yes.
Maybe like maintaining a positive attitude.
Good, positive attitude, absolutely, right? I mean, I think we all around people that either bring you energy or take your energy, right? So sometimes it's perfectly okay to take my energy. Tyler's not feeling well. Hey, Tyler, I'll cover for you. I get charged up because I get to help you out. And then who knows, someday you're helping somebody else out or me out, right? And then there's negative energy, right? Trying to get Tyler to, be as the best that he can be and not detract from the team or the group or the organization. So I think that's really, really important. And then on the other side too, the more positive people are, the more energy occurs. And I think that's something very important. Good, well, if you have some more at the end, I'd like to hear them. And then we might go back, Michael, and read some of those. Very good. All right, a servant leader. So this is a lot of what you said. It's a mindset to serve others first. So employees, right, or teammates or players, or your family, right? acquire personal growth and success. So that's different than normal leadership development, right? Normal leadership development is, we'll talk a little bit about, is, okay, you know, you've got X, Y, Z, and you've got stock, and you've got incentive, and you've got these things, and you know, you're going to start here, and you're going to move up the ladder, and you're going to be a CEO, and you're going to make a lot of money, right? And making a lot of money is okay, nothing wrong with that. But we got probably enough Wall Street millionaires working on that, and other people working on that. We need leaders, we need good people, we need good citizens, and we need folks that can get things done. And then once again, as the employee or that teammate or player or family member grows and succeeds and models servant leadership, the organization, right, and the other teams and players benefit, as does the customer and the fan and the community. So that's kind of a lot, right? That's a lot. We'll have a slide later that compares things, but think of it as, if I serve somebody and they're doing the best that they can do, and we're being successful as a family, as a unit, as a team, as a business, as an organization, with this mindset that we're serving others and those around us, it starts to form, it starts to become the way the organization works and the way that we all start to think. And eventually it moves the organization to be successful. And this is something that goes back, once again, to the days of kings and queens and servants, right? There were some areas where groups changed the way that they governed. There's a story about a group that went out as a servant, and they didn't realize that the servant that was part of this group was the integral leader of the group, was actually the leader. And when the servant left, the whole trip kind of fell apart, right? And so we think about some of these ideas. And then this was brought into kind of modern business thought probably about 20, 30 years ago, and it's been studied and been looked at. And you can go online, you can read a lot. There's actually a place that you can go and learn about servant leadership. And so it's kind of becoming something that we're thinking about more and more as we're able to have AI do the other stuff, right? The data stuff, the hard stuff. It's the people stuff that we need to work on. So Starbucks, right? This was normally built this way, right? Let's make sure that our workers have insurance. What? At a fast food place? Give them insurance? That's gonna kill it. Didn't. Let's give them an education at ASU, you know, as much as we can. Let's support them. What? We're gonna pay for their college education? How are we gonna sell enough coffee to do this, right? But they built a culture around what they call the server or the team member, right? The baristas and others, to make sure that they're appreciated and that they're rewarded, right? And as that grew and grew, it became more and more difficult. Of course, when you have a large international company, is how do you continue to have that? But once again, that's at the root of Starbucks. And if you read some of Howard Schultz's books, that's how they became very, very successful very, very quickly, right? It was about that transaction with the customer. So when you walked in there, they said, "Hey, Tyler, great, good to see you again. The regular?" And Tyler would say, "Oh, really? Yeah, that's great." And then they'd write his name on the cup, and then he'd get it, and then the next day he'd come in, and they built that relationship. And then pretty soon it's like, "Tyler, where do you go to school?" "Holy Cross College." "Tell me about that," right? And so that's the type of servant mentality and servant leadership that could lead to value in the private sector. Marriott, same thing, the largest hotel company in the world, the largest hotel in the world. And right there it talks about servant leadership at Marriott's level. There's one that wasn't on here, it was on my notes, but it didn't get transferred on here, is Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines, if you go and read about Delta Airlines, it's about employees, it's about employee success, it's about serving the employees, and then through that comes the customer. And Delta Airlines is the largest airline in the world. So it doesn't work just for small companies and small groups and colleges and universities, it works for large operators. Nordstrom, the same thing, right? Nordstrom was a place where it was about serving each other and serving the customer for many, many years. They're the ones who kind of said, just, you know, if it doesn't work, bring it back, right? And it caused the whole industry to say, "Oh, now we got to accept all this stuff back," right? They can assign you a personal style expert that will come and work with you, no charge, right? That style expert will, you know, say, "Craig, you look like a mess. Let's get you fixed up. And by the way, call you when something comes in or something goes on sale." And they developed a relationship with that retailer different than what had been normally out there prior to Nordstrom's. And I put Holy Cross College because, you know, that's what you're all about, right? Educating folks to the level that they can go out and make a difference globally. Once again, within that philosophy of the brothers who helped set this up, with understanding that you are important. And this college plays a huge, important role in the lives of all of its graduates, in the communities and families that they touch. And through a small college, we would consider a smaller college like ATSU and here, you can really make a huge impact on the world. And you are currently doing that. All right, so we think about servant leaders. I think about Jesus, him talking about servants and him being a servant and us being servants was something that they talk about a lot, right, in the New Testament. This is something that was probably a different concept when this first came out. I'm used to kings and queens and, I'm serving them. Somebody's going to come serve me, right? The Romans and the folks involved. This was transformational that actually caused, right, the whole thought process, the political mood to swing when, one individual was able to change something pretty dramatically in a structure because he saw himself as serving them. And they said, this is somebody that I want to follow, right? Well done, my good and faithful servant. Gandhi. So that is someone who, if you haven't, you'll hear about, you might see a movie or read about, but once again, his whole idea was serving individuals and helping a country become the best country that it could be, India, right? Mother Teresa, I had a friend that went with Mother Teresa, was a nurse, and she went to be with Mother Teresa in Calcutta. And she only lasted a few months. She was the right person, the right personality. She really believed in what Mother Teresa did. And that was the time when they would go out early in the morning and they would go to the worst areas that they could possibly go and oftentimes administer care there, food, medical care, whatever they could do, or bring them back to an area. And after about 3 months, Mother Teresa said, you're not going to be able to stay here. And she goes, well, why not? Why not? She recognized that the individual was losing such weight because at that time you had to eat the same food as the people that you were serving. And she just literally could not get enough food in her body to maintain her weight, right, and to maintain health because her body she just couldn't do it. It really wasn't a mental issue. She wanted to do it more than ever. Just physically, she couldn't do what Mother Teresa had done. But these are the type of people that are servant leaders that inspire others and move people on. Martin Luther King Jr., right? If you read about him, he says, hey, I knew I wasn't going to make it. I knew I was going to be killed. I knew someone was going to assassinate me. But yet he chose to still continue to move forward in a way that transformed the country, in some ways the whole world, of how we think about rights, civil rights, how we think about individuals, and so a true servant leader. John Wooden. So this will be kind of fun. This is a famous basketball coach at UCLA, and he's got a connection to Notre Dame. So we're going to get to that. This is going to be fun. So John Wooden, a gentleman who did some high accomplishments in the NCAA we'll talk about, but a servant leader, created a thing called the Pyramid of Success. And it talked about how different levels, if you can accomplish these different levels, this leads to success. And you'll see that parallels some of the business ideas. Nelson Mandela, once again, South Africa, in prison for almost the majority of his adult life, being able to come out and continue to have an attitude, the positive attitude that was mentioned earlier, and once again lead a country, a whole new country that looked at how the relationships were completely different than they were before, and be able to move that forward. Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman Supreme Court judge. And then Steve Kerr, Mike D'Antoni, some NBA coaches. We're going to have some fun and talk about who I know personally. Phil Jackson, we talked about success. Sometimes in sports, you have servant leaders. 11 NBA championships, and Michael Jordan, 6 NBA championships, and each devoted time and energy to help the others on the team succeed. So Phil Jackson realized, and he's always been this way. He wrote a book where he was a player called Maverick, right? I mean, this guy's always been a little bit, off the edge there. But really thinking about each player. In the beginning of the season, he would go to each individual player and give them a book. And so, some of the players really could care less, right? I mean, I don't want to read a book. But he would ask them to please read it. And it was designed, something picked out especially for that player. So that started causing a relationship to occur, right? I'm giving you something of value that I feel, and if you'll read it in return, we can have a discussion. I think that we can start off on a real positive note. And then he would get players that normally wouldn't get along with each other to get along with each other. And if any of you can think of a cast of characters, the Chicago Bulls certainly had a cast of characters, right? They had, at that time, the best player in the world. They were bringing in Michael Jordan from another country, controversy, right? They were brought in Dennis Rodman to do some things, right? They had Scottie Pippen, went to a small college and, was trying to have his own identity with the Chicago Bulls. And he was able to take all of this mess and get the players to work together to accomplish something, right? Let's win some games, bless you. Let's win the division, let's win the conference, let's win the NBA championship. And then Michael Jordan has to cooperate, right? And so Michael Jordan had to look at his role differently, as do many NBA players and WNBA players as they mature, right? Their bodies change. Sometimes they have to become a defense or rebounding expert later on because once again, maybe some of their other physical skills are changing. And so Michael Jordan was amazing at doing this, getting the players involved early, knowing the right amount of push to give them, the right amount of motivation, when to be tough, when not to be tough, and Phil Jackson the same way. And it was an amazing time in the NBA that they were really a dominant force and won, three-peats and won a huge number of championships. And then he went to LA and he did the same thing, right, with Kobe and coming in and Shaq and figuring out how to let's get all these folks to row in the same direction, work in the same direction so that we can accomplish something, right? Very good. Then John Wooden, I promised I'd get back to you. We called him Papa. And so the night he passed away, I was with Ann Myers, who at that time, when she was in college, was kind of one of the leading women athletes in the world. She played volleyball and basketball at UCLA. She had a number of brothers who played. Her brother was on the last championship for John Wooden. But it was my last year before I became president. We were in the WNBA locker room, and she had gotten the text that Pop had passed away. And so he was so loved that the players and those around him considered him part of their family until he passed away. And he passed away, I think he was close to 100, if I recall correctly. But 316-68 winning record at UCLA, a 30-0 season, which is pretty hard to do in basketball, 7 NCAA championships in a row. So what would that be, a SEPTA repeat or something like that, right? That's pretty crazy. And 88 consecutive wins, which came to an end across the street when John Shoemate, Adrian Dantley, Kelly Tripucka, and there's one other name that skips me for the moment. Notre Dame stopped UCLA's 88-game winning streak. Now, you can imagine what kind of news that was and how exciting that was for Notre Dame, Digger Phelps and the team to accomplish that. And so, they knew they were going to lose someday, but to have an 88-game winning streak come to an end across the street, I think it still pays homage. And I believe, Shoemate was here last year, the year before, and I have a coin. They did a thing for him, and I think they brought the 50th anniversary, or whatever that team number was, together to celebrate the end of the winning streak. And then, of course, Bill Walton, some of you may know, passed away recently. And same type of an individual, once again, very concerned about the rights of folks. Bill Walton got arrested during the civil rights protest and went to jail. And he and John Wooden would butt heads, but he eventually understood that John Wooden was the model, right, was the right one to follow. He came to early preseason with his hair long, and John Wooden said, boy, I love you, and you're still my good friend, and I wish you good success on what you do, but you're not going to play for the Bruins. And Bill Walton, at that time the greatest college player, right, as John Wooden telling him that, he got on his bike, rode as fast as he could down the hill, got a haircut, came back for practice, right? And so that's the kind of respect that Papa had because of, once again, his servant leadership. And he says and this was something that you brought up, right? The most powerful leadership tool you have is your own personal example, right? That's the most powerful leadership tool you have. If they can see you as the example, if they can see you as the leader, if they can see you as someone truly concerned about them and the organization that you're working with, that is how they're going to get their energy, right? We talked about energy transfer back and forth. So when Dr. Clark walks around campus and he knows just about everybody's name or he can recognize faces, I think he says, give me 3 chances. What happens if you can't do it in 3? Is there a bet? You taking the coffee?
I flunked. Yeah.
Okay, good. I like that. Okay, so we'll make that part of the Holy Cross thing. But those are the type of things that drive the success and leadership in organizations, right? How many times have we heard, the team got together and had a pizza night before. The team got together and had a time that we had a social outing. Our board does that. We do that during our summer meeting. We bring everybody in and we have a day of just getting to know each other. Preferably, we were at Yellowstone this year, and I thought somebody was going to get hit by a buffalo and a car and all sorts of things, but bison or whatever, it all worked out. But they have that time to bond together. So when they do meet and they do transact business, they know the family, they know the history, they know everybody and how we're all going to work together to accomplish things. And we actually asked them to bring their families with them, right? Something that's very helpful. All right, for some of you, this comes really naturally, right? And I admire you. And there's been many people in my life who I just looked at, I go, oh man, how do they get that? They understand it, they get it. They're so successful, they're such great servant leaders. Me, it was more of a journey, right? I had to kind of think about, all right, who is Craig, right? How do I get the most out of each day of my life? How can I help people the most? And being a physician was helpful for me too, right? Because I could see my results right away, right? I could walk in a room, I could interact with Tyler, and we could have a 20-minute conversation. And then when I saw him maybe a week or two later, his elbow was fine, or he had surgery and he's back doing well. And then, we might see him hopefully again. So it's pretty easy for me to do it. It's not quite so easy in other areas and other business, especially if you're in an isolated situation, like you're working from home and you're just kind of missing out on some of the social things that could occur in an office setting or in a team setting. Have to work a lot harder, right? And so how do we do some of those things? For me, it was just, every day trying to think about it, kind of keeping it in the front of mind. How can I help folks? Coming up with different ideas, reading, so we can kind of move the organization in that direction, but the way that we provided care. And so part of it was looking at it from the patient's perspective. So what we thought was, let's stop. It's the end of the day, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday, patient comes in, doesn't speak English, has had the problem for 2 weeks, doesn't have insurance, right? Doesn't have a ride, 5 o'clock Friday afternoon. How are we gonna do what's best for the patient, right? Or what's best for the team member or the organization. And then what we would say is, listen, okay, Tyler, you have to go pick up your kids, take off. Michael, can you stay a few minutes? Great, good. What's your first name? Ian? Dion, okay, Dion, do you mind helping, get the x-ray guy, let them know we need an x-ray? Coming together under the idea of what's best for the patient, right? And if the practice is thinking about what's best for the patient, and that's always the first thing, we never have complaints about, oh, God, why are we putting this extra patient in? Why are we having to do this extra bit of work? Why are we seeing somebody who doesn't have insurance, right? All those different things. So it was a little bit easier for me as I got involved in a larger organization to say, let's think of how we take care of our students and our faculty and staff and our board members like we would do our patients. And I remember I had one dean who was a little rough on people. And I said, you know what? If you would just treat your staff like you treat your patients, you'd be great. And sure enough, I think it caused a little spark, and that dean was able to make some changes in the way that she addressed some of the faculty and staff in that area. So I think you can learn and model that. But you have to kind of work out. Does anybody have any other thoughts of what you might do or I might do or others in this room might do to kind of learn how to become good servant leaders? There may be a good example of someone in your life who was able to model something like that. And it doesn't have to be kind of the servant title. It can be, somebody did something for me that was really, really impactful. And I know there's a lot of stories, and so I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but can anybody think of a situation where they had somebody that helped them out? Okay. All right. Well, maybe afterwards, if you feel comfortable, you can come up and share that, because I'm always trying to learn how to be better. All right. So this is kind of almost the reason you came here for. On the left is traditional leaders, and this is completely okay. There's nothing wrong with traditional leadership, all right? Sees leadership as a rank to obtain, right? So we're moving through the rank, we're improving our resume, our CV, we're improving our income, and I want to go up as high as I can in this rank and do very, very well. And that's what I get up every morning and I think about, right? Completely okay. Uses power and control to drive performance, right? So we're going to watch you, we're going to monitor you, we're going to fill out reports, we're going to rank you, and we're going to move those people out who don't progress and do well, and we're going to move those people that are the highest producers, and those folks, we're going to continue to move them up the chain, right? Very successful way to run a business. We're going to measure success through output, right? We're going to measure it through output. So how much of these widgets, what are these things that you did, how many games did you win, how many points did you score, et cetera, right? And then on the bottom there is, speaks, right? Good speaker, got to communicate and believes it's about them, right? This is about me. A servant leader sees leadership as an opportunity to serve others, right? So just from the very beginning, when you think about that person who's coming into your school or coming into your business or on your team, right? Shares power and control to drive engagement, right? Doesn't always have to be the one scoring all the points, doesn't always have to be the one that gives the interview on TV, has their picture taken, etc. Measure success through growth and development. Are we better off? Are you better off? Are we giving you the things that you need to become successful? Are you fitting in the culture? If not, how can we help? And if you're not fitting in the culture, then maybe it's time to move on to another place, because I think you're going to be more successful than fighting the culture or fighting the team here. And oftentimes they appreciate it and they'll go, well, I was waiting for you to tell me that so I can move on. It's like, okay, well, I was missing something there. Measure success through growth and development, listens, right? Listens. And I think you learn this from working with patients and others, that if you listen long enough, they pretty much kind of tell you what the story is. And if we're good listeners, if we're listening to our students, if we're listening to if you're in business, your customers, if you're listening to the folks that you're supervising or that you're working with, they'll usually kind of tell you a lot. They'll tell you oftentimes, how you can help them be successful and how the organization can be successful. And understand it's not about them, right? And Dr. Clark, the first thing when he goes to a president's thing, when he walks in the room, they told him, you know what, it's not about you. And that's hard, right? Because somebody said you have to be able to take criticism, right? You have to be able to take that. And so they kind of grind that into the president, say, it's not about you, it's never about you, it's about the students, it's about the faculty, it's about the staff. All right, level 5 leaders, quickly, this builds upon what you've talked about. Jim Collins, you may have, if you're in business, you'll run across his books, right? How do we take somebody from good to great? What are the characteristics of a great organization? And how does that great organization grow? And they took all the data, they did all the studies, they looked at a number of things, very detailed research approach. And they have this, highly capable individual makes productive contributions. Thanks, I know you're getting me a water. That's there's a good example. All right, thank you. So think about this teammate as somebody, thank you very much, who is a good player, right? They come in, they're there every day, they're a good player, they contribute to the team. Maybe someday they'll be captain material, and you really need to have those folks. Maybe it's a younger person who comes into your business or in your life or in your area, and they're good and they have all these qualities. They have knowledge, skills, and good work habits. Then the next level is they now contribute to the team, right? They contribute to the organization or they contribute to the team. So this is someone who kind of realizes, okay, I may be captain material here for the team. I want to, drive success. I want to stay a little bit later, work with the players, stay a little bit later, get there a little earlier, work with some of the associates. So that's at number 2. Number 3 is competent manager, right? So now they are able to take some of the organizational effort and do some of those things. And then they're a leader. They catalyze commitment. They're kind of the Uber captain of the team, where they say, okay, listen, we're going to have to operate it differently to be successful. We're going to have to give, a little bit more. We're going to have to change the game plan. We're going to have to hustle a little bit harder. We're going to have to do some different things. And so that's that leader. That's an effective leader. And then there's the executive leader. This would be somebody who really understands the culture, really tries to move things forward, is committed to that leadership, and seeing others succeed, right? So the level 5 leader is a little bit like the servant leader, right? Uses kind of the same tools, but you'll see even more so in the next couple of slides. Next slide. All right, so the level 5 hierarchy. So the level 5 leader is kind of like the top servant leader. So this is something that they may ask you in a job interview. So it's pretty funny, when I went to interview for the presidency, one of the faculty members happened to be sitting on this side of the room, said, do you consider yourself a level 5 leader, right? Now, if I hadn't known that, I would have not have been able to answer the question, right? But it's kind of a basic fundamental in leadership that we kind of know what this is. And I said, well, I'd like to get there someday, right? I said, I'm not there yet, but I would like to get there someday. And I still feel that way. So the level 5 leader on that previous slide can do all those things that the teammate can do. They're a good teammate, they show up on time, they've got the skills, they hustle. The next one is, wow, they give a little bit extra. They work with the other players. They come early, they stay late. Then you have the individual who's kind of moving toward the captain, right? They give that extra effort. They thank the ball boy. They thank the person sweeping the floor. They thank the coach. They remember people's birthdays. They do other things to kind of drive engagement with the team. And then you have that next person who now really takes all that as a kind of an Uber captain and takes it to the next level, knows about your brothers and sisters, maybe gives you a ride to practice, helps the younger players, defers as a follower to the older players, even though that individual might be a better player or a better executive, defers to that individual because she or he knows their time will come. And then you have the level 5 leader who really can bring it all together and drive performance. So kind of like the Michael Jordan or the Diana Taurasi of a team, right? Kind of the GOAT. All right. And you don't need to go through all of these sequentially, right? You can go through, as long as you have those skills, you can move to that level 5 leadership or further down that level. They have a compelling modesty. They're extremely modest. They don't talk about themselves. They'll talk about the organization, the contribution of others, and instinctively deflect the discussion about their own role. And we see that play out every day, when they interview a player on TV that said, wow, what a great game you had today, Tyler. You were amazing. What's next? And then Tyler says, well, you know what? We played a really tough team, and our offensive line was amazing, and, we're just happy to get out of here with, healthy and get ready for the next player, next team, right? Doesn't really talk much about themselves, right? And so therefore the other teammates don't get jealous. We had a player, Charlie Gardner, who ended up going into the NFL, playing at Tennessee and going at the NFL, that played at the community college that I covered. And the players would actually get jealous because he would score 5 or 6 touchdowns a game, broke all the records. It was like a magic show. Charlie was just amazing. And like I said, he went on to Tennessee and then the NFL. But the other players would get jealous of him because, he wasn't trying to get them jealous. He was trying to get to the next level, right, and play the best that he could. But because he was so successful, the other players would go, oh, I'm not going to get to play scoring a touchdown. Charlie's going to get to do it all. So they're modest. They don't talk about themselves. They talk about the organization. And unlike big personalities, so Lee Iacocca was a gentleman from years and years ago, but Elon Musk, we know, kind of overshadows the things that he's involved with. Steve Kerr and Mike D'Antoni were just the humblest coaches. Steve Kerr now with the Golden State Warriors, just a humble guy, just would understand. He would walk around the building. He was our GM for a while, and we had a tough owner, and he would actually talk to the employees, work with the employees, help the employees, get them onto successful programs. It was just a gem. Left the Suns because it just wasn't right for him, and then he became one of the most successful NBA coaches in history. And then Mike D'Antoni was our coach when we had the 7 seconds or less, so we would try to score within 7 seconds. That was our offense. We didn't play very good defense. In fact, we were at training camp the year after he left, and I heard all this squeaking going on. I go, what the heck is all that squeaking? And I went in the gym, and that was the basketball shoes squeaking on the court. I hadn't heard that for like 5 years because we never played defense, right? And you have to squeak, you have to get down to make those shoes squeak while you're playing defense. I go, wow, I hadn't heard that for 5 years. We were just an offensive team. It was kind of comforting, but we didn't do any better. But just fun personalities. They laugh at themselves. They don't take their work too seriously. And don't take yourself too seriously, right? That is the stuff that helps in bringing to people. So a level 5 leader looks out the window. They're humble. They give credit to others. They give outside factors that have helped them be successful. And even if they can't give credit to something, they say it was just good luck, right? It was just good luck. This was great. Because they don't really need that level of self-grandiosing that other people need. At the same time, they look in the mirror to assign responsibility, never citing bad luck or external factors when things go poorly. So I've always learned that when something goes wrong, just, if it's in your camp, first thing you can do is just say, hey, it's my fault. I take responsibility, and how are we going to correct this, right? And then the rest of the organization goes, good, okay, good. He's taking responsibility. But then we go back and we work on a solution, right? We don't say it was Tyler's fault or Michael's fault. We say, it's my fault. We got to fix it. And same way, if you're dealing with a patient or an organization, you want to be as transparent as possible. Because those folks, people realize that, okay, they're really in this deep and they really want to help the organization. If they're willing to offer a solution, because nobody's going to be perfect, right? There's always going to be something that's not going to work out, right? You're going to miss a free throw at the end of the game. The ball's going to bounce off your foot. You're going to miss a field goal, right? You're going to accidentally sign the wrong piece of paper, someone's going to leave their email open, there's going to be a cybersecurity attack, there's always going to be something that's going to happen. And so the faster you admit it and take responsibility, everybody can heal, understand it, and move on. And if they have a good relationship with you and you have a good relationship with them, most likely you're going to figure it out and survive it. Once again, people that look in the mirror and look at themselves and credit themselves, it's just a very difficult life to maintain. Humble, standards, and then how does that last one go together? So I want you not to just accept good, but I want you to be great, right? We all want that for ourselves and our families. And so how do you keep that as part of the servant thing? So you have to kind of do it with love, right? You have to be willing to have that hard discussion, as was said earlier. You have to be able to sit down, and you have to be able to tell them, listen, Tyler, I really like your job. You're doing a good job, but I think we can do better. Are you open to that? And then Tyler would say, absolutely. And then it's our job to help them go from good to great, right? We just can't say the organization can just accept the average, right? If we do, then we're really not leaders. We're just kind of there. We're in that lower area where we come to work, we're skilled, but we're not leading. So sometimes you do have to have those tough discussions with someone who can get better or groups that can get better. All right, mentor, we're almost done. Brings knowledge, right? Knows of opportunities. Hey, I know someone or I know a place where you can go to get this experience or to have this done. Can make connections. Hey, let me pick up the phone or let me do an email, let me do an introduction to each other. And Marco and I have done that with individuals, and inspires you to keep going, right? And sometimes it can just happen directly. It can be a family member we talked about. It could be a friend. It could be a coach, a church member, or it could be an expert in those areas. Sometimes you're going to have to go and make a big effort, right? Like if it's something that's not, within your reach, you may have to say, okay, how do I, learn about, atomic physics in aquariums, right? Well, there may only be one group who does that, and you're going to have to try to figure that out. So you might go to a faculty member first. Hey, you have some advice? Do you know anybody? Oh yeah, my third cousin over here does this and this. Let me see what I can do. Or heck, I have no idea. So then you're going to look at some things. Maybe there's a conference, right, that has this. So maybe I can go to a conference and meet somebody. Let me look at who's at some of these businesses. Oh wow, they went to Holy Cross or they went to Notre Dame. Maybe Dr. Clark will make an introduction for me as president. They're more likely to open his email than they might open my email. Not necessarily, but they might. A lot of people are looking for the opportunity to mentor. They just haven't had the person contact them. Most people like to talk about themselves, right, and share things, right? So that's something that you may have to go out and do. So think about your network kind of like a target. So you have the people that are close, family and friends. So you can kind of go through that Rolodex. We don't have that anymore. You can go through that directory in your mind, right? And then the next round of the target would be, okay, is there anything locally that I can get to? Is there somebody locally that I can reach out to that might let me observe or give me some opportunities? And then kind of you may have to go further out. And then if you're looking at internationally, then you're kind of really thinking about how you're strategically going to get there. But it's about obtaining the knowledge about where they are. So I tell our medical students, well, there's a conference in Arizona on orthopedics. You're a second-year student, you're off that week. Why don't you go there in the lobby and introduce yourself and say, hey, do you have a student rate? They go, no, we don't have students at the conference. Okay, well, is there anything I can do to kind of help out? I can sweep the floors, stack the papers, punch people in. Is there anything that I can do? Well, no, not really. You're kind of strange, get out of here. Then you're there the next day and they go, shoot, just go in and, stop bugging me, right? Go into the conference, and then when you're in the conference, you meet the orthopedic surgeons or other people. And so sometimes, you don't want to be a nuisance, but you want to be persistent. But those are just some of the ways that you might be able to do that. But there's usually somebody in Holy Cross or Notre Dame or in your faculty and staff that can help you get to that next level. So you want to try to take advantage of that because it really will help you. All right, hopefully you had some fun. You developed your concept of servant leadership. Once again, putting servant in the front and service in the front, helping others grow. By them growing and you growing, then the organization grows and you can be successful. A little different than the traditional way we think about leadership. Level 5 leaders, once again, kind of 5 members. The player who's really good or the person who's excellent comes in every day, does their thing. The next level, the one that kind of has some maturity, helps the other players out. And then the captain, and then the leadership team. So those are some of the things to think about. I promised you some health information. I'm going to send that to you. We'll attach it to this memo, but this is a pretty long time, so I don't want to unload that on you, but I'm available if you want to talk about performance nutrition, longevity nutrition, those types of things, how to help yourself. I'll put that all in a form and we'll attach it to the thing. It'll be easy to read. My email will be on there so you can contact me at any time. Good. And any questions, you can keep that. All right.
You're good.
We didn't have to,
Open to that one in
we
case
didn't
there's
have to go
questions.
back. I think
Yeah.
we hit almost all those things, so
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, terrific. Can we give Dr. Phelps a big round of applause? Thank you. So let's see if we've got some questions. Gosh, we've
Yeah.
covered a lot of scope here. So, of course, Dr. Phelps is involved in medicine, so some of you might have some health science interest. He was a basketball player in college, high school and college, and as you can see, he spent a lot of time around professional and college organizations. So you might have some questions. I know we got a bunch of basketball players in the room about teamwork, about success. What you've seen in those successful teams. You also heard about this concept of level 5 leadership. We've talked a lot about. You'll remember from the construct that we did for the characteristics of a Holy Cross leader. We had that one. We used the word magnanimity, right? Magnanimity, and we said entrepreneurial magnanimity. But if we just focus on the magnanimous part, that's the virtue of striving for greatness, balanced with humility, for a cause that's bigger than yourself, right? So you just heard that described as a level 5 leader. And then, I wanted to start off the questions maybe with talking about mentoring, right? And so we had a great question in the very first session where somebody said, hey, I feel like I want to mentor my younger brother and I want to find a mentor. And maybe I'll frame this in this way. So one of the things that we share with our seniors when you go through your capstone class is really what does your life look like after college from the time that you're 22 until the time that you retire at 72. It's probably going to be about that age by the time you guys get there, right? So what does that 50-year span of time look like? Well, the period of time in your 20s is the period of time where you're working really hard to build your reputation, to learn as much as you can learn, and to find your mentors, find your team, right? You talked about those teams. And so, Dr. Phelps, maybe you might talk, you've been a college president for 12 years. By the way, the average stay today for college presidents is 5.75 years, right? So you've doubled that. But when you were 22 years old, you probably didn't see for yourself being a college president someday.
Yeah.
So as you look backwards, can you look at those things in your 20s that may have contributed to help you get to where you are today? Was there a mentor? Were there things that occurred, circumstances that you encountered that led to this?
Yeah, well, I think, coming out of high school, I was the typical, kind of type A kid, ready to go and move forward. And I can remember Coach Hamlow at Azusa Pacific saying, Craig, you got to cool your jets a little bit here. You're going to, life isn't going to be perfect, and you can't expect everybody else to have that same, drive and that same attitude that you have. You got to broaden your thought process, right? And it was good because, I'm in Los Angeles in a very different environment during a very different time in the 70s. And so he was quite helpful. So Coach Hamlow, once again, it may not have been a direct mentorship, right? In other words, we didn't, go out and have coffee or sit down and talk, but it was the fact that he recognized each of us and what each of us had some growing up to do, and realized that, someone at 18 or 19, I better have a word with that guy, right? So that was very helpful. And then in medical school, we had similar here where we have a lot of faculty interaction with students. And there were some folks that came up from St. Louis and taught the course in sports medicine, right? And so they were willing to take their time, travel from St. Louis up to Kirksville, and do a series of things on sports medicine. But at that time was just an evolving, just kind of a concept. There wasn't really any specialty around sports medicine. But they talked about, the opportunities, and, we had to come and stay an extra 3 or 4 hours. A couple nights we had to come in to do this. But once again, those folks were inspirational and were kind of the beginning folks starting sports medicine. And so they were encouraging. They were people that we kept in touch with. We saw them take it to the specialty to the next level and then joined up there. But it was because a group of us was willing to stay later and do more work, right? Do the extra work that's sometime involved in STEM and some of the areas that you're in, because they are long learning paths, right? They're long learning paths. So that was very helpful. And then during my externships, there were several physicians who kind of took me under their wing and talked about, okay, these are some of the options in medicine and healthcare, and some of those I still speak with today, and some of my professors from medical school still speak today. One of them still teaching in the medical school that I'm now the chancellor, so that's kind of weird. But yes, so I think those are really, really important. And then in the NBA, what I did back then is we didn't have electronic stuff that we could look at, so there was a book, and that book had all the physicians listed, and then I would get books about the teams and find out who were the team doctors, and then I would go visit them. And so I would reach out and I would say, hey, I'm going to be in Phoenix. Can I just come by and introduce myself? And they might slam the door in my face, or they might not. And so I kind of said, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm a first or second year medical student. Can I come, are there a chance to rotate in my third or fourth year? And so those types of reach outs got to me, Paul Steingart, who was my mentor with the Phoenix Suns and the fellowship in Arizona. So he had been the first team physician of the Phoenix Suns. And then I joined him, did the fellowship, was an extra year after your residency. And he kind of helped propel me in sports medicine. He's kind of like my dad almost, right? He really opened up the doors, introduced me to all the people, and was very selfless about that. And then one day, he started developing some tingling in his toes and feet. And he called the neurologist, one of our friends, Jeff Gitt, and he said, I'll meet you in the emergency room. And he had what was called Guillain-Barré. And if you've ever heard of this is probably a virus that attacks your nervous system and causes an ascending paralysis. So it starts in your feet, and pretty soon you can't move your toes, and you can't move your ankles, and you can't move your knees, and it can go all the way up to the point that you have to be put on a ventilator. So you have to put a vent in and give them oxygen if it goes that high. Fortunately, he recovered pretty well, but he still had some chronic problems with his hands over time. And so when he left the Phoenix Suns, I stepped in for the lead physician of the Phoenix Suns, and then I was always the Mercury's team physician. But it's through that mentorship, because I decided as a medical student to drop by his office one day, introduce myself, and they didn't know who the heck I was, and then took me on as a rotation, and then mentored me, and then brought me back for the fellowship. That was a pretty critical mentorship. But I had to go out and find those, because the specialty didn't exist at that time.
Yeah, so part of what we're hearing there, and I see a hand raised here, part of what we're hearing there is you got to seek it out, right? You got to have some hunger. You even talked about going to that conference and not being able to register, but I'll sign up I'll help out whatever way I can, and then you just show up, right? I can tell you that the people that I have as mentors can describe stories. One, for example, was a longtime 20-year college president, and he said that every town that he would go to, now this is a guy that had done this successfully for a long time, but every town that he would go to, he would look up to see what colleges and universities were there, and he'd ask to go visit with the president, just to pick that person's brain. And a very good friend of his became a gentleman by the name of Dr. Benjamin Mays, and Dr. Mays was the longtime president at Morehouse College. And they became really close friends and did some work together even during the civil rights era. But he had to seek that out, right? Dr. Mays was probably thinking, who is this guy that's trying to come see me? He had to seek that out. So it's seeking out those mentors. There was a hand.
Yeah, so on the topic of kind of seeking mentors, I know you touched on this a little bit, but what would you say are kind of the traits of a really good mentor? And also, how do we discern that in others? Because I know one is obviously knowledge in whatever field, but it seems like there's other things that would kind of distinguish just someone who's knows a lot and someone who's really good at mentoring.
Very good. So how do you find a mentor? How do you qualify them? So it's not just somebody who may be wasting your time, right? So do they have the right knowledge? Do they have the right skills? Do they have the right way to reach out to them as far as the value that you'll get out of it? Is that correct? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So you want to try to find someone that knows somebody that you know, and I think that often occurs. So Dr. Clark will introduce me via email to a student who's interested in something that I know about, right? And then usually what I'll do is send an email back, say, hey, this is great, thank you. Here's my phone number, or Cynthia will call you, we'll set up a call. So I think the first thing is that individual willing to, accept you and communicate with you, and then offer up a time to call and get together or visit in person, right? So that kind of tells you the very first wave, because you've kind of already qualified them as maybe an expert or somebody that you'd like to learn from. And then I think, being open, and this was brought up earlier, is to take what you can get out of it, right? Because some people are of the personality where they're going to have a lot of information and they talk a lot, and you're going to leave there going, oh my God, I've got 10 pages of notes and I've got the rest of my life planned, I better get to work, right? And then there's going to be other people that communicate differently, like you learned, I think, last week or the week before, where they may be more introverted, and so it may be more relationship, and so you may have to do the talking, because they just might sit there and you might say, okay, well, I'm a sophomore at Holy Cross, and I'm really interested in software engineering. What's it like to work for XYZ? Who in your life helped you determine this? You may be doing the interview, and they may be the interviewee, right? And so sometimes it's like that. And then you'll get a good feeling after that first couple of visits. Is this something long-term that I need to keep in touch with? Do I need more information? And I try to leave it open. I always tell the students, keep me updated on what's going on. And once you get to this level, your application's full or your application's in, or you get an interview, let's get together again for a second session so we can catch up, and then we can talk about what that interview might be like or what's going to happen next. So I think you kind of qualify them in some way, and if you can't, then you realize, okay, I'm going into this kind of blind. Listen, like it said up there, be the listener, but don't be afraid if that person is not a big person on communication, because once again, we're looking at mentors, not necessarily leaders. You may have to be the interviewer, right? So don't be afraid to ask. Have a little bit of a list of things that you'd like to talk about, and if they talk about it and your list never comes up, that's okay, right? But if it slows down and you have questions, a good mentor will probably ask you if you have any questions. You want to have kind of your list prepared. I think that would be helpful. And then you can ask for more opportunities. Is it okay if I come and visit? Is it okay if I contact your assistant for a tour? And you'll kind of build those relationships like that. If it's somebody that, once again, just doesn't fit your personality or style, that's okay. Just thank them for their time and take what knowledge you can get, and then look for the next mentor. Right? I think that's a good thing. Anything that you can think about that you in particularly had in mind that you might have run into in the past, or that just didn't feel right?
Really.
So I think one thing that comes to mind is I've met some people who, they have a lot of knowledge, they're just not good at conveying that knowledge.
Yeah.
So, like, they might be really amazing at computer science, but they don't know how to, kind of convey that knowledge to someone who doesn't have the degree of competency that they have. So it's like that person knowledge. They don't remember what it's like to learn, and so they have difficulty, teaching. So that's what immediately comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I think that's good. In medicine, we see that a lot, right? People don't remember 25% of what the doctor said, right? We talk for hours and then they remember one or two things. I'm thinking about getting a hamburger. We had one Suns player who we went through a real detailed explanation about knee surgery. I mean, we had the general manager, we had his agent, we had the player. I was in there, the surgeon was in there, we were all in there, and we talked in detail about plus and minuses, about the procedure, about everything. And then we looked at the player and we said, what do you think? He says, I'm thinking about getting a new stereo. Right? He didn't care. He just, he was not even really listening to the conversation because we were talking about stuff that wasn't relevant, right? I mean, okay, good, surgery's next Tuesday. You guys say I need it, I trust you, you're part of an organization, my agent says you're good. He turns it off right away and he's on to thinking about the more important things, right? So you're right. So that's a tough one. So anybody with a thought of how you might kind of break that ice, or do you just kind of leave frustratedly like I do when the IT guys try to teach me something? Any thoughts? Dr. Clark, do you have a thought on
Yeah,
that?
so I think it is a great question, but I think in terms of finding a mentor, I'm not always convinced that it's the knowledge necessarily that's most important. It's the mindset, it's the process, it's the personal witness. And then you need that advice, of course, and you're going to them probably because they've had some level of success already. Because circumstances are always different, but for me, it's the attributes, it's the personal witness, it's the mindset, right? And I just want to help. I just think in leadership, so much of what we're trying to do is just to strengthen our mindset all the time. And I had a mentor, for example, one time that I was complaining about some things, really having a hard time, and it's beating me down, and I'm tired, and gosh, I got a pit in my stomach, and the person stopped me and said, "Listen, you're being selfish. You're thinking too much about yourself. You're thinking too much about your own emotions. You're thinking too much about how this makes you feel. You've got to go serve others and help them to feel. You start helping others feel better about themselves and others to be successful, then you won't feel this way." Now, that person, by the way, as a mentor, was a automotive mechanic, right? I wasn't talking to that person as a mentor in my profession. I was really talking to that person as a mentor just in life. I'm having a really hard time. And it was just such a great wake-up call. So it's not always a competency-based thing. I think it's personal attributes. It's personal hero, somebody who's a hero in your eyes. And I also think you can have mentors that you never meet, and that comes through reading books, listening to podcasts, right? Really just trying to elevate yourself all the time.
Very good. Any other thoughts or questions? Yes.
Yeah, I just have a question about being a servant leader in general. Topic in pressure. How do you? So can you hear me? Yeah, sorry. But how do you know? So you have principles when you are leading a group. You have basic ideas of how you're going to grow the group around you. You talk about one of the main things you do is serve others growth in the program that you're trying to establish with them. So how do you know that your strategy is the correct strategy for every member of this group? Like, do you ever find yourself having to change your strategy, or do you just have faith that what you have in mind for everybody is the correct way? How do you know that you're not wasting their time in terms of their type of commitment, or is it just time to abandon this ship, find a good ship?
Yeah. So what if you need to make some changes in the servant leadership in some way to make the group and team more successful, right? So that's a really good question. So our board, as well as the group that I work with at the cabinet level, we have a set of norms and values, and those tell us what we value. And so it talks about students first. It talks about all the values that those in the cabinet agree upon. And then the norms is how we treat each other, right? And we read those every month when we come together. And if there's something that's not right, or if there's something that exactly you said, well, this word or this doesn't make sense today. So for instance, we added something about speech and academic talk and freedom about 4 or 5 years ago when there was a lot of things going on. And so we added a special norm to that. So we adjusted to that. So they're not defined very narrowly, they're defined fairly broadly. So once again, if somebody is doing the right thing, they're probably going to fit within that organization. But we have norms and values that we talk about, and if they're not in those norms and values, their behavior, then there's a problem, right? There's a problem. So one would be about communicating, right? Did you communicate with that other person first before you assume that they weren't doing the right thing, right? So that's usually the biggest problem. So we have that as part of our norms and values. So that kind of sets the stage. They're not my norms and values. The group put them together. The group brought those together. So we can say, okay, does this still make sense or it doesn't make sense? Then what we do is we try to allow each individual to grow every year. So what we ask them to do is please pick something, an area that they want to grow in professionally and personally, and we will help them, whatever it is, if they want to gain some more knowledge, support them in going to gain that knowledge. If they need to do something else to do that, we will support them. So they're growing right? They're growing within their profession and they're growing personally. And then we look at their health and we encourage them to make sure that they're doing as much of the health things as they need to do. If we can get people to do the norms and values and treat each other that way and keep student satisfaction and performance as kind of the goal of the university, we don't really care about kind of what they do every second of every day, because we've created these lanes, boundaries that are quite right for them to operate in. But it's a really good question. So we do get people that don't fit in, and we do get people that don't are unable to keep the students first and function within this group of understanding, and so they usually self-select out, right? Sometimes you have to encourage them a little bit, but sometimes they'll self-select out because it's not for everybody. There are some people that just are so concerned about their identity, and what they're thinking is that they just don't work well with the other people and folks, and that kind of blends out. So yeah, we have to sometimes adjust within those norms and values, but we won't give up those norms and values. We might add to them, we might define them a little bit better, but they're going to have to function at that level. I think kind of like a coach will have a certain way that they function, and there's some flexibility. They're learning, you're learning, but when it comes down to it, their philosophy is going to be the one that the team will need to follow, right? It's a good question. Was that helpful at all?
It's a great question. If I could just maybe
absolutely
add to that too.
Yeah.
So if there's something I've really learned from what you've done with A.T. Still University, growing this small college, the Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine, to now campuses in Mesa, Arizona, to Santa Maria, California, to continue to expand across the country with some other opportunities as well, is that you've established a culture, right? And the culture drives everything. The culture, and I've heard Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if you're really focusing in on culture, and there's culture that aligns with a set of values, and everybody understands what those are, and everybody is selflessly putting themselves forward towards accomplishing those goals in alignment with those values, then success is magic, right? Sometimes we think it's just going to be the X's and O's. It drives me crazy with coaches sometimes that think, I'm going to draw up the best game plan you can ever have, right? And you can draw up a great game plan, but people have to go out and execute game plans. And if they don't have the right culture, the right motivation, the right trust, the right love, the right selflessness, then it's all for naught. And so an example in my own life was when I was playing college football, the most talented team that I played on in the 4 years I played in college football finished 4-6-1, right? And the star players on that team, you just ask them, they'll tell you they were the star players on that team. And that was part of the biggest problem, right? They ate separately. They lived somewhere else off campus separately. They wanted to be in the locker room and nobody to mess around with them. They had their own gig. When it came time for TV interviews, it was really all about them and their stats. And all the rest of us on the team were like, what? They're great players, but I don't want to play with that guy, right? The guys that had to block for the tailback, I don't want to block for that tailback, right? And it was a real deal. It was a real thing that happened. The next year, those guys graduate. The next 3 years, the team went 10-1, 11-0, and 9-2, and then 11-0 again, right? And so what happened, the star player the next year, and I'll never forget it because I was on the team. I was on this unit. We came back from the summer, and I reported to summer camp, and at the end of the first day of tryouts and testing, the coach said, okay, there's a list over there of everybody on the Opportunity Club. And the Opportunity Club were those of you that would be given the opportunity after practice every day to get into better shape because you reported to camp out of shape. I was on the Opportunity Club, right? The star player on the team joined the Opportunity Club. Gordy Lockbaum was his name. And I said, Gordy, why are you on the Opportunity Club? And he said, well, I want to get better every day myself. He said, but frankly, you're the guy that backs me up, and I want to push you to get better because if you get better, it's going to make me better. That guy went on to be a finalist 2 years in a row for the Heisman Trophy. 2 years in a row, right? And we won a national championship, right? So I think it's culture, selflessness, discipline, right? We changed very few things about the strategy in those years of building a team. And so I think I look at that as well. How do you apply that to a business? How do you apply that to a church? If you're a pastor, how do you apply that to your family? How do you apply that to a school, a college, where I get a chance to lead, right? Whatever your sphere of influence is, I think it's culture, right? And it's so driven by humble servant leadership.
Yeah, no one is as smart as all of us, right? In other words, I think that's the key. And so sometimes you do have to, like you said, switch a little bit, change things a little bit. But once again, if you've set good goals and good culture, then you're probably going to be okay. And then once again, if you make a mistake, be the first to admit it, right? I mean, not everything works. And in fact, if you're an organization who's trying new things, you will have some failures, right? You're going to have some people that don't work out. You're going to have some projects that fail, especially if you're a successful institution. You're going to do some investing in some things that you're not going to bet a lot on it, but you're going to bet on some things that are new and upcoming technologies or skills or things or equipment, right? But you're going to say, okay, that didn't work. I'll take responsibility. Let's go back and let's move on. That's a good question.
Yeah, good question. We got time for one more.
Yeah. So you talked about like Steve Kerr.
Yeah.
And so like I heard you list like some of the attributes of like what a leader is. My question is, being around these sort of high performance people, what are some like one or two things that you took away that have really helped you in your personal life and that you recommend to us?
Good. Dion, right? I think, yeah. So the question was, particularly, I mentioned Steve Kerr, who, once again was really kind of the soul that saved the Phoenix Suns for a little while and the Mercury a little while when things were looking at their very worst, right? Steve Kerr came on board and was humble, right? So Steve Kerr here he is, successful player, multiple NBA championships, has all the money in the world, doesn't need to go do this, comes to an organization and is working with a leader and in a culture that at that time wasn't good, right? Wasn't good. But he was a very humble person, right? And he could relate to each individual, not like the owner and the others could relate to that individual. So he had a way of learning your name, sitting down with you, spending time with you, and helping you understand, what the organization is doing and what your concerns you have. He was a good listener, so he was humble. He was a good listener. Steve Kerr always has a briefing of articles that he still has with him that he has people give him that they think he should read each day. So he gets a little stapled folder of 8.5 by 11 pages of news that people think he should be reading and learning about and expanding his knowledge, right? And so it's not what he picks up, it's what he thinks other people should have him read. And he does that every single day. And his wife was quite an interesting thing when he came and worked for the Suns. She advised him not to do that. She said, don't go do that because you don't know that owner that well. And Steve came anyways, and he was once again a great bright spot at the organization. And since then he took some time, and then he went to be with the Golden State Warriors, and once again, great success. So I think humble, listener, always, tried to help others grow. It was complimentary, never talked bad about the people that he worked for, right? Even when things were very difficult, he didn't talk negatively about them in front of the other folks. So he was always positive. I think we talked about that earlier. He had a tough, he wasn't the boss, right? We talked about being a good follower. So he had to make the best that he could, because he wasn't the top guy. He was the GM, and when the owner says or the president says X, Y, Z, you have to do X, Y, Z. But you have to do it in a way that fits your soul. So he was able to continue to do that. He never blamed things on other people. If the team wasn't doing well, he said, "Yeah, I'm the GM. I'm responsible for that, and I take full responsibility for it." So he took responsibility. He still does that today with the Golden State Warriors. And so those are things that I've learned by watching Steve. I think the most thing is that ability to communicate and understand that everybody within the organization is important. So they did have a really neat thing where all the executives would work at the different levels of the organization. So an executive would perhaps a day a month work in facilities, work in security, work in the front office, right? Work in the other areas within the organization. So every vice president understood what it was like to help park the cars at night, right? To do all those different things. So I think that's an important thing. Great question. He's a unique guy.
Well, and you've heard so much. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
You heard so much last week from our speaker, Susan Ford, who talked about people, right? People are people are people are people, right? And it's really just trying to get to the heart and motivation and love and joy and centeredness. So we are at the end of our time, folks. Thank you,
Yep.
Dr. Phelps.
bet.
He's going to be around the rest of the afternoon for those of you that are interested in any kind of health professions, whether it's through AT Still University or not. So please stick around for that. I know we've got basketball teams with practice.
Yeah.
We've got a
Good
football
luck.
weekend coming up. And then 2 weeks from now, we regather here. Okay, so there's no class next Friday. All right.
Thank you very
all.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate everybody. Thank you.